based on research, based on your experience, what are the most practical steps households can take to become food secure?
Because there are a host of things that at the household level that we can do.
Mhm.
And I think the question that we can ask is that how is the pillars, or how are the pillars of food security affected at that level? So how is access to food affected at my home? How is availability of food affected at my home? And how do I use food at my home? And then when we look at it from that context, then we can, focus on the steps that we can take to mitigate these aspects that basically affect our food security. So some of the things that, and these ideas, these solutions, and so have been branded about, quite on a regular basis. Most times when we speak about food and nutrition security, you hear them. So it's
Mhm.
not just about knowing them, but actually implementing them and actually being a part of it. So for example, there are home-based solutions such as your small gardening. So very small spaces, you can grow things. I remember from my personal experience, when I lived in Trinidad, I grew food from pots. So I would grow tomatoes in flower pots. I grow cabbages in flower pots, because
Mhm.
you're not looking to grow it extensively. You
Yeah.
just want something that can help supplement some aspect of what you have within your home. So
Mhm.
other little things like composting that can promote your how you grow and the nutritional value of what you grow. And then you also have to make some pretty smart choices. And I think that's where the Food and Nutrition Council can come in smart choices in terms of food preservation, because we may have food, and a lot of the times you have the food, and food preservation is actually an aspect of food security. Um, for example, what can you do with food you have in surplus aside from, a little sale or so with it? How can you preserve that food to make it have a longer shelf life futuristically? So, for example, things like drying, pickling, and so these are things our grandparents and so used to do. So, those are some smart choices that we can make. And then, in a broader context, we can look at things like using our local diet, like using the things we have around us, like our breadfruit, our plantains in different ways. And also, you have to also consider how we handle food, and that's the utilization aspect of it. So, for example, how we store our food storage,
Mhm.
to avoid things like spoilage and these sort of things. Proper food storage. So those are some simple, household things that we can look at that can aid within the context of food security in terms of, what we can do at the household level. And one of the things I think, something that we don't usually pay attention to is around, we're now in the rainy season, we're now in the hurricane season. So do you have a plan? Do you have a food security disaster plan? So what do you have in your cupboard, and how do you store these things for in the event of a natural disaster? Those are things that we can take into consideration when we're thinking about simple steps that we can do to look at food security and the household context.